the latest interview that Vladimir Putin had, in which he said Ukraine opened this Pandora's box itself, well, then it should expect a response targeting the most vulnerable sectors of its economy, which frankly are already on their last legs. And this also applies, by the way, to agricultural products whose exports are a major source of revenue for Ukraine. How do you see? I think the latest interview, the last interview of Vladimir Putin, it brings a lot, you know, when it comes, because we know that many people are talking about that the government is not going that far, but he shows that maybe a new sort of move is in the making on the part of the Russian government. What does that mean when he talks about Pandora's box? Ukraine started that, and we're going to continue with that against them.
Well, yeah, Russia's counter-escalated, made Ukraine into a landlocked nation, by destroying the 7 ports in the Odessa Oblast. I mean, the ports are very degraded. Anything coming in and out is getting hit, regardless of whose flag it's flying. And the locomotives are being destroyed, including by Russian partisans from the local population in central Ukraine. Now, what he's not saying, but what should be worrying any of your European audience, is, how should I put it nicely? You're screwed. Yeah, I think that's about the right way to put it. Because Europe, well, non-Russian Europe, the EU, is looking at 40% decline in crop yield this year from last year. That's starvation level. And Ukraine isn't going to be able to feed Europe, because that's where most of that Ukrainian grain would wind up and not going to poor countries, but winds up going to Europe, or it gets resold. So the backup plan for the EU to keep at least the lower classes from quite literally starving to death is gone. At the most, with rail out of question, no shipping. You've got trucks, and trucks, has been estimated at most can move about 6% of the grain, the sunflower oil, and so on, out of Ukraine. Additionally, the other areas that are being hit is steel production. That's being hit very hard. I mean, hit as in destroyed. The agriculture, obviously, actually you can't destroy it for obvious reasons. It's a huge area, but the steel is a very concentrated area. And just the fact that you can't get the product out of the country, that's $50 billion Ukraine is looking at losing. Guess who gets to fill in that hole? Yes, the starving masses in the EU get to fill in the 50 billion. So that money isn't going to go to buying more grain, because there really isn't any more grain online except for Russia. Russia's coming in. Second harvest is going to be getting collected up in September. First harvest was a record harvest. That's right. You know, Russia's out of fuel. No, it's not. And the harvest is not rotting in the field. The unfortunate part, because of this war on ships that the West started. I mean, Ukraine is its little strumpet, but that strumpet isn't going to do too much without its owners telling them what to do. The Ukrainian military is the execution portion of this organization. The decision making is Americans, British, maybe some other Europeans. But the war on shipping, the only unfortunate part in this is that Africa, parts of Africa and Southeast Asia are going to get hit very hard. There's going to be starvation because of the West. I mean, let's just keep it, aimed at who it is aimed at. It's the West, because the Western drones are being used to attack grain shipping that's coming out of Russia. And Russia, unlike Ukraine, doesn't feed the Europeans. It feeds countries like Egypt, which very going to be in a desperate situation. Many other countries, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. So those countries and those people are going to starve to death because of the Europeans. What else is new? The West is going to be starving lots of other people to death. Nothing new under the sun. This has been the repeat pattern for the last 500 years. I mean, let's not forget Churchill starved 6 million Indians to death, and I don't know how many 100 million more suffered because he just took all the rice out of Eastern India in 43 and fed the British, and I guess they burnt the rest so they couldn't eat. But he stole all the food crops out of Eastern India. I mean, this is nothing new for what the European exploitive empires have been doing for generations. And now again, there's going to be mass starvation thanks to the Europeans. Nothing new. There's your humanitarian values of the garden. Luckily, Iran, by the way, is not going to starve because the Caspian Sea is going to make sure there's enough grain coming in from Russia to keep Iran up on its legs and in the fight.
Yeah. He was asked about the objective of Ukrainian attacks, and I'm talking about Putin, and he responded, in general, the goal of Ukrainian attacks is to bring about Russia's collapse, and something they have long dreamed of and constantly talk about. Is that dream is a Ukrainian dream, or you see the backers of Ukraine are dreaming that way?
Look, Ukraine is an instrument. It's not an individual entity. It is an instrument. It is an instrument that can be used to the last Ukrainian, and then whatever shell there is discarded. So this is the dream of the West, and has been the dream of the first pan-European invasion of Russia wasn't Hitler, wasn't Napoleon, wasn't even Charles of Sweden. The first pan-European invasion of Russia was in 1012 A.D. Prince Boleslav Hrabry, who's the Prince of Krakow, and his Holy Roman Empire allies. This is 1012 A.D. It's been 1,000 years of nonstop European invasion, at least one every 2-3 generations. I guess they get like lemmings, and there's just too many Europeans, and they need to go jump off a cliff somewhere and die off, and then they decide that cliff is Russia. I mean, we've been fighting even when we defeated at the Battle of Kulikovo Polya, Dmitry Donskoy, whose remains, by the way, were just found because he's a saint. His remains were found. They had been missing for at least I think since the Soviet Union took over, about 100, so 1920, so 100 years, and they were found and ideally preserved. That was something that hit the news. When Dmitry Donskoy was fighting Mamayev and the Mongols under Mamayev from the western portion of the Golden Horde, or what was left of it, there were also European mercenaries, Arbaquars and others, and pikemen on the side of the Mongols. So it's like anywhere you turn, there's always some Europeans trying to attack Russia. It's just the tradition. Pretty much, there isn't a single. There's almost no European nation or peoples that hasn't been that's been so lazy they couldn't get off their butt and go try to invade us, at least as a group, once in their history. The Danes, I think, are the only ones, but they're itching for a fight with Russia because they haven't gotten in the club of getting beaten down for some whatever reason. I guess they want to be like everybody else. So there's that issue. I mean, look, let's keep this honest. Again, Ukraine isn't deciding anything here. They make little decisions in between. The big decisions are all made by the West. This is NATO, right? And NATO is America. This is the Epstein elites and their sick fantasy of how they're going to destroy us. I mean, they don't want just to change the government, of course. They want to destroy Russia, carve it up into the small pieces, 10, 20, 40, depends whose flight of fantasy it is. And then suck them dry, get them to fight each other, and use them against China. Do the same with China, balkanize India, and then feast on the remains of humanity. That's the only real plan of, quote, progress that the West has now. It's a parasitical entity. The West is a parasite on the rest of humanity. And we've seen that. Even production is basically gone out of the West. They need other people's resources because outside of the U.S., most of the West, well, except for maybe Australia and Canada, but outside of those three countries, the rest of the West is resource poor, is undereducated now. I mean, America has basically an illiteracy rate of almost 50%, 53%, 21 total illiteracy rate, according to last year's statistics from the citizens, adult citizens, and 32% partial literacy. If you're reading at the fifth grade level and you're an adult, you're basically illiterate. And they need the brain. They need to suck out the brain drain out of the other countries. They need the resources out of countries. They need the gold out of countries. And by the way, Trump, the $12 billion from the sale of Venezuelan oil that was supposed to go to Venezuela, that's also missing, and nobody knows where it went. $12 billion, pocket change. Trump's offshore slush accounts, and
It's
the $4 billion,
by the way.
yeah, and the $4 billion in gold that the British were holding. Well, they froze. Has now been transferred to America. Venezuelan. It's Donnie the Pirate, Donnie the Pirate King of the Caribbean. So there you go. That's the modern West.
I think that's the problem, Stas. I think it is far different from what Donald Trump was talking about before being elected. It was all about production, jobs back in the United States. But the move on Venezuela, it somehow made some sort of delusional strategy on his part, because he thought that it's going to be as easy and big and beautiful as Venezuela was so far. As you've mentioned, the United States sold something like $13 billion of Venezuelan oil. And they gave them $448 million. Nothing is getting back to Venezuela. But the problem is that's not going to bring the jobs back and production back to the United States. That may help them to dominate the energy market somehow. And many people would argue that the whole agenda on the part of Donald Trump himself, which was different from the Israeli one, was to come to the West Asia, control the Persian Gulf, control the oil market in the Persian Gulf, because they had the dominance over GCC countries. If something happens to Iran, then it's going to be all under the thumb of the United States.
Yep.
This is what was the plan, but it didn't work so far. And the question is, how do you see Donald Trump dealing with these two wars? The war in Ukraine, as you mentioned, how is it going right now? It seems that they want to continue the war. And in the West Asia, the same. They're getting back to economic war. That it's going to be a war of attrition. It's some sort of attrition, because it's all about the economy and nobody knows how is it going to work for the United States. This is how many times did they try that? It just lost it.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. Donald Trump shot American manufacturer in the forehead long before he tried something in Venezuela. It's called tariffs. Run along with me on this little story, this little adventure story. So Donald Trump slams 20%, 30%, 500%. It varies on a day-to-day basis. Tariffs on all these suppliers. Well, the problem for that is American manufacturers. First of all, there was enough dumb people that said, "Oh yeah, we're going to make the evil manufacturers pay the extra tariffs." Yeah, they're going to make. No, dumbasses, you get to pay the extra tariffs. Tariffs are always passed on to the final consumer. True, somebody in the middle may swallow a little bit of that, but if a company, by the way, if a company pays more in tariffs and doesn't pass it on as the cost to the consumer, guess what happens? That means their profit margin falls. They just pay less in taxes at the end of the year. So either way, there's no free lunch. There's a Russian saying, the only free cheese is in the mousetrap. And how many Americans put their heads in that mousetrap, believing Donald Trump and the other moron that he's got called Besant, who outside of crashing other countries' currencies for Mr. Soros. By the way, that's why I love that. The MAGA crowd. Oh, Soros is evil, but his right-hand man is fine with us because works for Uncle Donnie now, so that's all good. Yeah, because they're all enemies. Really, they are. Oh yeah, they're real enemies. They hate each other, just like the Bushes and the Clintons hate each other. They hate each other so much they've been intermarrying since the 1500s. I mean, that was proven, and you can go find and look it up. There's been several genealogical studies done to prove it. They were local nobility in two towns outside of London. from the 1500s. So this is how ridiculous it is. So let's go along this little trip. The problem is the U.S. imports. It imports a lot. I mean, in fact, it imports most everything these days. So even if you're an American manufacturer, chances are at least some of your sub-assemblies or materials are coming from abroad, probably from China, a very good chunk of it, other countries, South Korea. So you're importing materials, right? And then you're putting them together. So at least partially you are getting some of your parts tariffed by whatever American tariffs is. Now, if you're inside the U.S., you may actually still be better off than somebody that fully manufactures their goods outside of the U.S. and imports it into the U.S. You may have a bit of an edge, maybe, depending on just how much of your materials are tariffed. And just by the way, and then you got the rest of your cost of manufacturing, your labor, your insane amounts of American bureaucracy that is on the federal, state, municipality levels. The state and municipality levels, Trump can't do anything about it because that's the state and municipality levels. And this is the problem of turning around manufacturing in the U.S. The insane state environmental laws. I don't want, everybody wants a job, but just we don't want the factory in our backyard. That's the problem. They're like little children. We want it all. We want to be rich and we want to have jobs, but not where I can see them. It doesn't work that way, ladies and gentlemen. That's just the reality of life. Something always has to give. Okay, so that's internal market in the U.S. Now let's look at what happens when American companies try to succeed. I mean, try to compete with just about any other country in any other country's market. So I'm a Chinese company, or hell, I'm a Malaysian company, and I'm selling to, I don't know,
It seems that we've lost Stas. Can you hear me, Stas?
yeah. Let's say I'm a Malaysian company and I'm selling to, I don't know, Italy. So if I sell to America, whatever I'm selling to America gets tariffed. If I'm selling to Italy, it doesn't get tariffed. So it's whatever my cost, my $100 it costs over there, and I sell it for $100. And if I sell it to the U.S., it's $150, 50% tariffs, let's just say. While the American manufacturer might not have, might still become cheaper because of that than me. Now, having said that, the problem is if the American manufacturer has to use my parts or anybody else's parts that's imported into you.
Yeah, we've lost you. Your picture is frozen, Stas. Can you hear me? You're back. Can you check your VPN if your
VPN is off? VPN's off.
Okay. Great.
Just the internet. So any American company that now exports anywhere in the world, whatever sub-assemblies or materials it's importing, those have been tariffed. So its manufacturing costs have just gone up, and it may have been barely competitive before. It's no longer competitive now. And if other countries are also putting additional tariffs, counter tariffs on America, it's even less competitive. So American companies manufacturing in the U.S. have become uncompetitive.
Yeah, we have the same issue here.
Yeah. So sorry, I was cursing under my breath for the internet. So the tariffs. I mean, tariffs and the way they've been applied. And by the way, they also create this instability because they're applied, taken away, changed on a whim. There's no plan. Do I invest in a new manufacturing facility in America? Well, are the tariffs going to be there in 2 months? Are they going to be there tomorrow? Donald Trump is absolutely unpredictable factor of, I ate your cottage cheese from your country. I really like it. Take the tariffs off. Like, do I want to make the cottage cheese factory in your country when the tariffs may come off tomorrow? And business doesn't like ambiguity, and it freezes any future investment. So Trump has done everything he can to make sure that A, people don't invest in America, and B, American companies aren't competitive outside the U.S. I mean, in his own insane approach to economics, which is basically as a sophomoric as possible, he's doing massive amounts of damage. He's that drunken cocaine high elephant in a China room, or in a room full of China. There, or porcelain, whatever you want to call it, crystal. And there's that. Now, having said that, then we go to the two wars. Look, Trump hasn't given up on Project Ukraine. But if you look at Project Ukraine from a step back, and you look at Project Iran from a step back, they look a lot alike. They're just running on slightly different cycles. Oh, we're going to make sure they're paying. Oh, they want to negotiate. Oh, we're almost at a deal. Oh, they've backstabbed me. Oh, and it's the same cycle. And the Ukraine thing's the same cycle. Oh, we want them to all to be friends. Oh, we're going to be, we're the neutral guy. Oh, we're giving everything to Ukraine. Oh, we're going to do deep strikes to punish them. Oh, we're going to be the neutral party again. It's like, it's a cyclical concept on both. There's the two cycles just spinning around. Now, having said that, so it's more or less becoming predictable. Okay, what day are we on? It's like the lunar cycle. Is it a full moon? No, it's a new moon. Okay, how much time do we have before the next Trump is going to exterminate our nations? And it's just, and nobody's. I don't think on the negotiation side, on the international level, anybody's even paying attention anymore. Because he, pardon my French, he's full of shit. I mean, that's. I think that's the conclusion everybody's come to. The guy is nuts. He's obviously there's enough dementia kicking in that his ability to make decisions or tell the truth has been even more degraded than it was before. And at this point, nobody's really paying attention to him. I mean, he's destroyed Iran like I think 48 times now. What day are we on? 49. Meanwhile,
nothing left. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the U.S. is $40 trillion in debt, and it just spent $20 billion by selling its euros to Japan to keep the Japanese from dumping the American treasury bills, because Japan is in a yet again another crisis. That, by the way, America created for it 30 years ago, and Japan is basically bankrupt. It's like 280%, maybe 290% debt to GDP. Nothing major. You try running that if you're a family. But to keep the Japanese from selling treasury bills, because now oil's gotten so much more expensive, and the Japanese overstretched budget was never meant for that. They are the biggest holder of treasury bills in the U.S. If they start mass selling, everybody's going to run for that market. And the only way to keep and when you run for the market, I mean to dump their treasury bills, where they can still get something out of them. The only way to counter that is to increase the percentage. Like I said, the 30 years are 5.7, the 10 year is a 4.7 or 4.6, somewhere around that point. So it hits the 5%. That psychological barrier of your goose is cooked. The U.S. is spending $1 trillion to pay for the interest on its debt, not to pay down its debt, but the interest on its debt. And since it doesn't have that extra $1 trillion, it borrows that $1 trillion, on which it now has to also pay interest. And this is what's called circling the toilet bowl. And the U.S. economy is circling the toilet bowl. I mean, the U.S. can always, countries can always just renege on their debts. But if the U.S. does that, and the U.S. has to import massive amounts of everything to survive because its manufacturing base is extremely depleted, and lots of other issues it has, including resource gathering allocation, it's not going to be able to do it. If it kills the dollar, that's the golden goose. But the dollar's dying anyways. And weaponizing the dollar is only accelerated by decades, probably, if not more. So what's the U.S. going to do? Well, it's going to make a vault of minerals. You heard that, right? About Trump's vault of minerals. What are you going to do with those? By the way, for those that don't understand, for example, iron. because I've seen this firsthand because I worked. I was a consultant on in an iron enrichment plant, so I walked the floor, learned the whole processes of this. When you take or nickel or any other of these materials, when these materials, they're not trace elements, but they're veins. But you're not sitting there with a little chisel taking them out, right? Like trying to find the vein. You're blowing up a camera or a chamber. I'm sorry, cameras in Russian. You're blowing up a chamber in a mountain, inside of a mountain, as an example, pulling out all the rubble, which is just mostly rock, and then you have to process that rock to get the iron or the nickel, whatever materials out of there. So what you do is you have to then take it to a metal enrichment plant. What does that mean? You take all this massive tons upon tons of rock, granite mostly in this case, to one of these plants, and it starts breaking gigantic slabs of rock down to something about that big. And something about that big, when it's like minuscule pebbles, you start working on it with chemical bleaching, electrolysis, or magnets to pull that ore out. And then all the slag gets tossed aside because what do you need the extra crushed granite for? I mean, I guess you could use it for road construction, but you don't need it. You need the iron ore, or you need the nickel ore, and those are big plants, giant grinders of different forms and formats. And then you take that enriched pellets of iron ore, and all that gets loaded onto train cars or heavy trucks, or better yet, ships, and that goes to a smelter. And a smelter smelts it into ingots of different purity and different alloys and so on. And then that goes to some other facility that either that cuts those ingots and either melts them down and casts them into some kind of form, or uses stamping machines to open die or closed die machining, stamping, and then machines them as needed. That's a cycle of manufacturing. The U.S. is missing a very large chunk of that cycle of manufacturing, but Trump is going to get the ore. I don't know what the hell he's going to do with it if you're missing the next step and the next step and the next step. You're actually better off starting at the top and working your way down, because you can import those ingots and manufacture them into something while you're setting up resetting up the next step to create those ingots and so on. But from bottom up, it doesn't work. What are you going to do with that iron ore when it's just massive amounts of granite that then has to be worked out? I worked at a mining facility on a project in Turkey, and it was gold. And for 1 ton of rock, they were getting about 3 or 4 ounces of gold.